Welcome everyone to CDO's Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, key leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Stantec Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. On behalf of the CDO Magazine, I have the pleasure of introducing David Burgess, who is the head of data engineering at Pinterest. Welcome, Dave.
Well, thanks so much, Robert.
So from a leadership perspective, is there any way that you can share some of the best practices that you've used either at Pinterest or previous organizations for modernizing data architecture?
Sure. So the way that we've transformed data engineering at Pinterest, and when I started at Pinterest 4 years ago, we were using some older systems. And we regularly had some production issues, and so what we really did was listen to our internal customers to find out what their top pain points were. So we talked to them. We did surveys for all of our internal users or developers, and then for the top pain points that required rebuilding or changing systems, we formed working groups to figure out the next generation system to have. And these working groups, importantly, were created with representatives from each of our major internal customers, our internal partners like security, infrastructure, site reliability engineering, and the team that was actually responsible for that original technology area as well. And so then we collected the current and future requirements, assessed the best software available, so both third party as well as open source, as well as what we could build ourselves. We did some technical due diligence, and the working group would make a decision. So we would then present our findings and decision to our senior leadership engineering community to get their buy-in and move forward for productionizing the system and migrating to it. So this methodology has worked really, really well for modernizing dozens of our systems. So it's really important to get the buy-in and listen to our internal customers right from the get-go and involve them in the decision-making.
It seems clear that you've got a nice methodology for figuring out the top pain points with your partners in the business, and then going through a cycle which says, hey, let's look at what we got, let's look at the current future requirements, let's come up with an architecture, and let's test that out and see if we can improve it. And it looks like you've been able to achieve some fantastic results. Yeah. So congratulations on that, Dave.
Thanks.
I wonder, when you look at the technology that you've you use to modernize data architecture, we talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence and things like that. Are there other key technologies that you believe are must, and you don't need to mention company names, not unless you want to, it's entirely up to you, but if you're kind of advising, a fellow data leader, right, and say, look, in order to modernize data architecture, you need A, B, C, and D, right? To achieve that. Can you give any insights as to what those technologies would be?
Sure. I think the first thing is that you have to be on a cloud service provider like AWS, for example,
right,
to have the infrastructure agility to be able to use the compute power that you need and to have the data storage you need. If you don't have that, then you're hampered right from the get-go. And the key technologies you choose are very much dependent on the scale of your data.
Right.
So what we're going to choose at our scale is going to be completely different from a company that has smaller scale. And you also got to think about the criticality of your service to your users. So for us, we have to have 3 nines, so 99.9% availability.
Yep.
And make sure that we are fixing instance extremely quickly, because production instances do occur. Whereas others may not have to have that real-time capability and be able to operate at a lower threshold. And then you need to also have the expertise and the bandwidth in your team and organization to be able to do things. So for Pinterest, AWS is our cloud provider.
Right.
Use that. We use them for everything, and we contribute. We use and contribute a lot to open source code, because open source scales to Pinterest needs, and if it doesn't, then we can scale it even further. So, if I was to if you would put me on to say exactly what systems we use, and I'm totally open to that. But on the big data platform side, we use Kafka to gather our data.
Yep.
We use AWS's S3 to store all of our data. We use Spark and Spark SQL and Presto for batch processing, and Flink for real-time stream data processing. And then on the analytics side, to be able to actually see the results and dashboards, we use Superset. We actually created a tool called QueryBook that we open sourced about a year ago, and that's for creating and running and sharing queries, so you can riff on queries and be much more productive in teams. And we use Druid for real-time analytics to be able to slice and dice data, and we built our own experimentation platform because that really was a competitive edge for us.
Yeah,
and then
I can see that.
And then on the online data systems, because the offline, or not offline, but the batch data systems tightly integrate, or at least integrate with the online data systems. We use MySQL, which we're all pretty familiar about, being a relational database. We also use TiDB, which is a new SQL database. Memcache for most of our caching. And we built a key value store on top of RocksDB as well. So
fascinating. I think we could go on and on. I'm sure our audience listeners would want to know more. But Dave, I'd really like to thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Robert. It's been a real pleasure to meet you and chat with you today.
And Dave, thank you very much indeed. And for our listeners, please visit CDO Magazine Tech for additional interviews. Thank you.